Dan.
Is it his turn?
What?
It's his turn?
Well, it's just weird for him to be quiet for so long. I thought he might have
I was
died
actually
of old
listening.
age.
For once, I was listening and being respectful.
Yeah, for once.
Trying it out. You got to, when you get older, you got to try new things. I was like, I'm going to try listening.
So, what point did you realize that you were in love with art, or
Well,
that you wanted to?
My dad was a commercial artist, and he loved comic books, and he would come home from work and he would draw like a new page of Batman every day. He'd do a little
Wow,
Batman story.
really?
It was kind of drawn like he's a great designer, but he could draw and paint. He could do just about everything, but he would draw these. I mean, it looked like a coloring book, and every day. I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, so that kind of inspired me. So I liked Batman, and I think he wanted to be a comic book artist if he could have made his choice. And so when he was younger, he used to be a professional boxer, and then he became a sign painter, and then eventually went to school. And
Is your dad Frank Frazetta?
yeah, no, he's kind of like that guy. He loved baseball too, just like Frazetta.
Yeah.
He actually introduced me to Frazetta,
Oh, yeah.
not personally, but he showed me his work. And so I always wanted to be just like him, like a lot of kids. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I'll impress him this way if I can draw.
All right.
So I was always drawing. He didn't want me drawing.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, it's a tough. Every job's tough, and there's probably no security in a lot of things. But with being a freelance artist, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever trends and tastes, or the mercy of anyone hiring,
Right.
for that matter. And in our case, there's 2 very big companies, and the other ones are a little lower. And
Yeah, in terms of resources.
in terms of it's not like if you're a doctor, you can run off to another hospital or another city or another.
Right, yeah.
So
So that's the flashpoint.
that was a flashpoint. I think I was like 14, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do for a living. I was 14. I sent my samples into Marvel, and they thought I was a lot older than I was, and they're like, this is great, and here's how much money you can make, and here's our insurance plan. And I got a lot of feedback from them.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, I can make more money than my father at this. I was cross-referencing. I was like, Mom, how much is Dad making? And so I was like, this might be the way to go.
Yeah,
So
sure.
already, like, I love my dad, but already like confrontational with him. And
Yeah, he was like, I've created my own
yeah,
monster.
it's like this kid, I'm gonna have to.
At what point did you realize that you were doing it? Was it when you got
I think
that
when I got
sample?
into I mean, I was doing comic books even in high school, and but when I was in Marvel Comics and actually picked up a paintbrush to start inking, maybe it was like Ron Friends or something like that, doing backups of Thor. I was like, I'm literally here. I'm in this bullpen. They used to have in Marvel Comics the Stan's soapbox and the bullpen bulletins, and you'd hear about this whimsical, crazy time going on at Marvel with the editors and the assistant editors and a little nonsense happening. And I was like, this is sounds like paradise to me.
Yeah.
And
It was like Mad Men.
it was great.
Yeah.
And actually I was lucky enough to be at Marvel when there's still a very family atmosphere, and there's a lot of kidding around in the offices, and there was a big in the center.
Wait, you worked there?
Well, I lived in New York City.
Okay.
So, and if you were late on a deadline, you can get a desk in the bullpen, and free art supplies, free Zipatone. Zipatone's that little dot stuff that you formerly would
How
peel
old were
off.
you at this point?
I was 21,
Okay.
and
That's insane.
yeah, it was great. I mean, you just go in there, and John Romita's wife, Virginia, was like the mother hen for all these artists and misfits. And you'd go in, you go, oh, I want some paintbrushes, some nibs, and then she'd go in there. You better not use this for a DC job. And I'm like, oh no, I'd never do that.
Yeah.
It was like a kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
I'd stick around the offices and just, I was just so happy to be there that I do work there. And so, if an editor, I would take whatever they gave me. So, if another editor somebody was late on a job or they didn't have somebody, they go, oh, well, let's get that kid. He's over there.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of work that way, and I never said no to anything, and I always made sure I made my deadlines. like which is extremely important. So like, oh, he's reliable. So I can
What
do
kind of stuff were you work? I mean, does anything notably you remember?
Well, a big turning point was artistically, in terms of inking, things were changing because Jim Lee was becoming popular, doing Punisher, and Scott Williams was inking them, and they were kind of developing this inking style. And very quickly things started changing directionally for Marvel, where before there was kind of a house style, which was probably very much John Buscema and Palmer from the Avengers days, to what Jim and Homage Studios was doing with Will Spartaccio and some other guys.
Yeah, they really did sort of blow things apart.
They did, and so Wills was working on this book called Legion of the Night, which was a horror story, but they were like, forget about that. We want you doing X-Men or X Factor. And so he had finished most of it, and they took Scott Williams, and they just wanted Scott Williams inking both those guys. And so I was the only one at the time at Marvel that I hadn't even tried to ink like them yet, but they knew I was always studying it, so they were like, well, let's give it to Dan. And I was just doing backups at the time. So I started inking and doing finishes on Wills for that book. And that kind of catapulted me into the X-Men office. And then Rob Liefeld saw something, and he wanted me inking his last issue of X-Force. And that really changed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I got known for inking in a specific way. My whole reason for getting in as an inker was I thought I could segue quickly into penciling.
So
But I was by no means, I was a terrible penciler. And they would every now and then give me like a little, thing to make me happy.
Yeah.
But it was, I just didn't have the experience or the chops, and I didn't
So
professionally belong in that.
So to unpack this, for people that maybe don't know, or just to keep it clear for people, there was a period of time where the top artists at Marvel realized how much their books were selling.
Yeah.
So the guys that were drawing X-Men and Spider-Man, or Spider-Man, just make things plural. That's how you make sequels.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man.
Lethal Weapons. They realized that the books they worked on were selling X amount, and they said, well, if we make our own books and they sell half this, we'll still be rich.
Yeah.
So they stepped aside and they formed their own company, and that's where Image came from.
Yeah.
And you were working on Image Comics from the first wave.
Yeah. I was working with Mark Silvestri at first because he was in the studio with Jim Lee, and he wanted, they wanted Scott Williams to ink pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, so they got me over there, and then Rob. They would have a bidding. They were very competitive. They were all friends, but it was a very competitive.
Yeah, it
thing.
seems like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing.
Yeah, and they were
where
like,
there's a lot of money and
I'm going to get Dan from them. And Rob was like, do you want to draw, right? Well, you can draw Prophet. And like, with my loads of drawing experience, that was like the first book I ever drew.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it, but you can recognize it's not exactly a super well drawn comic.
There's a quality to a lot of those comics that, to me, what was appealing about it was like, I can almost do this.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But it inspires me to want to do it.
Yeah, the difference between them is there was also a different aesthetic as far as what was as far as storytelling went.
Yes.
I think the art and the spectacle of it kind of was much larger than, say, storytelling. Like if you were picking up a Frank Miller Daredevil or Born Again by Mazzucchelli, that's the reason those comic books resonate with you, is because they're very deftly sequentially constructed. Yeah, so you're really going on a very narrated, curated trip and journey, and a lot of Image comics, and there's times for everything, and that the time for that was like the spectacle and just big bombastic things, and I don't think it really was about any specific story. It's hard to, like, if you go back to some of your favorite Image comics, and you'd be hard pressed to say, wow, I was crazy about this one particular storyline.
Yeah.
Or this really had an emotional
There's a
impact
very
on
hair
me.
metal moment for comics.
Yeah. So
like
I mean, and
selling.
there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
you know,
I mean, it literally was a hair metal moment. Everyone had
I had hair.
mullets
I
and
had a
pouches
tremendous
and
mullet.
smoke.
Yeah. So it was fun in that way, and I think things have changed now. And
Well, were you aware of that
What?
in Cuba? Were you aware of any of the comics trends or
No.
Image's existence? Or
We had, well, a friend of mine had Spawn, but he would get them from Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have no comics at all in Cuba.
Spain Spawn.
Spain Spawn.
Yeah.
Spain Spawn.
Spanish.